Now improve your English by answering an interesting question. If you want to get stronger, it's important to practice. Speaking practice number 27. Today's question. Some people believe that students should spend more time in math and science classes rather than humanities and social science classes. What is your opinion and why? Give details and examples to support your view. The word view here just means opinion, so the end of this question says, support your opinion. For everyone who's doing TOEFL practice, this is an independent speaking question. You have to explain your opinion, but you have only 15 seconds to prepare. Then you have to speak for 45 seconds. Want to try? If you're interested in doing it before you see my answer, you can think about it now. Then, when you're ready, let's take a look. Example answer. I believe that children who are in their years of compulsory education should study humanities and social sciences more. Understanding math and science is very important because in this modern world, everyone relies on technology. But reading and writing, as well as history and social studies, are entirely vital. Now that we're in the internet era, we must use our critical thinking when making decisions. As we browse through various social media platforms, we see a dizzying amount of contrasting information. In the case of a worldwide pandemic, for example, doctors and politicians will give many instructions that affect our safety and impact daily life. So reading ability and knowledge of social systems will help people accurately analyze events and stay safe. Key words. Should children focus on science or humanities? The first word is vital. Vital means necessary, most important. It's something you can't live without. For example, if you go camping in the mountains of Patagonia, you'll need light for when it gets dark, water to drink, a way to make fire, and a sleeping bag to stay warm at night. These things are vital. But don't bring your dog's hair dryer. It's really not vital. Next is browse. Browse means to look at many things casually, to look at things on display. When you go to the store and you look at all the goods, you're browsing. It's fun to browse, but if you can't find what you're looking for, it can be annoying. Dizzying. Dizzying means confusing. It's the feeling of spinning that causes confusion. When you spin around and around really fast, like a figure skater, you feel dizzy after, and may fall down if you're not careful. But it also can just mean confusing. In today's speech, it means there's something you don't understand. Number 4 is contrast. When you contrast two things, it shows how they are very different. Essay questions in school often ask you to compare and contrast two topics. This means to talk about their similarities and differences. For example, people in India eat with their hands, but people in Japan use chopsticks. They both eat a lot of rice, but their styles of eating are very different. That's a big contrast. Checklist. Let's talk about the important points of making a short speech. First, did you follow a good order? The most important point here is to start with a clear introduction. I always do that. For the rest of your speech, there are several ways to continue, but today I quickly mentioned the opposition. This is not necessary, but don't worry, it might help you think of what to say next. Then, of course, you should focus on your own reasons. After you give a reason, you have to explain the reason. Then, today, I gave a real example. Sometimes, real examples are easy to understand. I mentioned the worldwide pandemic that is affecting everyone on Earth. But then, you have to explain your example also. One more time. The most important is to start with a clear introduction. If you give the opposition, it's okay because it helps understand everything. Make it quick. Then, when you give your reason, make sure you explain with more details. Also, when you give a real example, you have to explain that too with more details. The next point on the checklist is to include specific details and examples. Again, let's look at today's speech. Remember, when you include details, you talk about who, what, where, when, how, and why. In today's speech, who means children, doctors, and politicians. What refers to browsing social media platforms, and I talked about the worldwide pandemic. Then you should mention where, which is in this modern world, and through various social media platforms. Next, you should try to mention when things are happening, and for that I said, in their years of compulsory education, and now that we're in the internet era. How important? Very important. How many people? Everyone. How many instructions? Many instructions. And how do you analyze? Accurately. Finally, don't forget to ask the question why. Why? Because everyone relies on technology, and because we see a dizzying amount of contrasting information. Explaining it with details this way, maybe you can see how details have a good effect on your speech. They make it richer and more colorful. With a lot of details, it's easier to imagine what the speaker wants to say. Point 3. Is there some variety? Using variety in the way you speak shows you have natural ability. Looking at today's speech again, we see that I began by saying, children who are in their years of compulsory education should study humanities. This is a good grammar point to use when explaining what you recommend, when making a suggestion. People who are A should do B. But then I used some variety when I said, now that we're in the internet era, we must use critical thinking. This is another way to recommend or make a suggestion. Now that A, we must do B. The emphasis is stronger, focused strongly, because I said must. Then I said, as we browse, we see too much information. The pattern here is, as we do A, we do B. This shows that two things happen simultaneously, at the same time. Then I said politicians will give many instructions, and knowledge of social systems will help people. I'm using will, but I'm not really talking about the future. This is the expected result in a certain situation. I started this pattern by saying, in the case of a worldwide pandemic. So I'm talking about a special situation, not 100% reality. So, this speech has a natural variety in speaking. Point number 4. Did you use appropriate vocabulary? When you think of the topic of the speech, you should think of related words that match. As you know, today's topic was about studying the humanities. Let's see if my words are related. Well, in the beginning, I show that I know what humanities means when I say reading, writing, history, and social studies. There's also philosophy, but that's okay. It's not necessary. Then I use the keyword critical thinking. I've talked about this in a previous presentation, but it's very important. You should understand this word because it's vital for education, especially in the humanities. It means knowing the correct way to analyze information, looking at everything and understanding the big picture. Then I use the word browse, which is good for looking at information on the internet, or looking at goods in the store, like I've already said. Finally, I talk about social media platforms. This is a good technical word. When talking about technology, a platform is a technology system that lets you do some activity. There are websites, which are platforms, but there are also software platforms and others. Point number 5 asks, did you stay on message? Stay on message is an expression used by people who make speeches. It means you should focus on the main idea. These speeches are short, so you have to focus on the main idea. Let's see. For the introduction, I said, we should study humanities and social sciences more. So this is the main idea that I have to focus on. Well, looking at the speech, right after the introduction, I say what the word humanities means: reading and writing, history and social studies. Then I mention the key word critical thinking, which is closely related to the humanities. And next we see that I mention contrasting information. Understanding different kinds of information will require an education in the humanities. And then, at the end, I'm still talking about reading ability and knowledge of social systems. So if you look at the whole speech, you see that from the beginning all the way to the end, I stay focused on the main idea. This is how you stay on message. So now we can see that you have many things to think about. First, you have to put your speech in a good order. Start in the beginning with a good introduction. Then you have to include many details. Remember to think about who, what, where, when, how, and why. This will give your speech a lot of color. Next, it's good to use variety. Think about your grammar and sentence patterns. You can use different verb tenses to change your grammar patterns, and make some sentences longer or shorter to change your emphasis. In the sports world, balance and speed are very good, but so are strength and toughness. If you were an athlete, being fast and strong would make you the perfect sportsman. And of course, you have to use the right vocabulary. If you're talking about insects, don't say that ants live in houses, because ants live in colonies. And finally, you have to stay on message, and that means you have to focus. While doing all of these things is great, there's actually one more point, and that's automaticity, or fluency. Actually, native speakers do all of these things naturally when they speak every day. You do this in your language too. So when you speak, try to speak naturally. It should not sound like you're reading from a book. If you speak freely, you seem more confident. Then the audience will respect you more and agree with what you have to say. Next question. Explain whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Elementary school curricula should mandate learning a foreign language. Don't be shy. Study with confidence and try it on your own. You know what's best in making speeches? Crushing the topic, shocking the people, and hearing the clapping. Yes, that is good. That is good.